Next, we will turn our eyes to the East Bay. We are joined by Ammon Reagan, a sustainability program coordinator from the city of Berkeley. At Berkeley's Office of Energy and Sustainable Development, Ammon supports the city's existing building decarbonization efforts, develops the city's annual greenhouse gas inventory, and manages Berkeley's building emissions savings ordinance. Thank you for joining us, Ammon. Please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Is my microphone working
Yep,
okay?
can hear you, I
Cool.
can see you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Ammon Reagan, and I manage Berkeley's Building Emission Savings Ordinance, also known as BASO. And so BASO has been around since 2015, and it was recently updated by Berkeley City Council earlier this year. And so today I'll be talking about BASO in the context of the new air district requirements and how the two programs complement each other. Next slide. And so first, I'll start by providing some background on BASO and the development of the new requirements. Next slide. So like many cities, the city of Berkeley has strong climate action goals. Some notable ones include achieving net zero emissions by 2045 and becoming a fossil fuel-free city as soon as possible. And our building sector, like many cities, is the second largest source of emissions. Next slide. And so in Berkeley, we have about 35,000 buildings, and 84% of those, roughly 29,000, are 1 to 4 unit residential buildings. And these buildings account for over a third of our building sector emissions. And it will take time and various policies to reduce emissions from our smaller residential buildings. Next slide. So that brings us to BASO. So the Building Emissions Savings Ordinance is the city's primary policy focused on reducing emissions from existing buildings. BASO covers every building in the city, from a small single-family home to a large commercial building, and it operates as kind of two distinct programs with varying requirements for different building sizes and types. And so today I'll be focused on our tenant sale program for buildings less than 25,000 square feet, which was expanded earlier this year. Next slide. So our current requirements for single-family homes and small residential buildings, BASO requires an energy and electrification assessment prior to listing a building for sale. So this is more of a disclosure policy, and the intent behind BASO was to provide buyers and owners with information on how to decrease their building's emissions, energy use, utility costs, with the hope that buyers would voluntarily complete upgrades. And over the last 10 years since BASO started, only a small number of homeowners have taken action. And we need many more buildings to start reducing their emissions in order to reach our climate action goals. So we need to move beyond disclosure to upgrade requirements. Next slide. And so for some more context, we use the Home Energy Score Assessment, and it provides a 1 to 10 rating on the efficiency of a home and provides a list of efficiency and electrification recommendations. So this program is implemented through BayREN, and home energy scores are currently offered voluntarily in all 9 area counties, and will soon be expanding to all of California. Next slide. So over the last few years, we've been developing new upgrade requirements for small residential buildings to be implemented at time of sale. So in 2023, we assembled a technical advisory committee, started working with realtor groups and other stakeholder groups, and developed a framework for the policy. And during this initial outreach work in 2023, the zero NOx appliance rules were adopted. And so the new air district rules helped shape the new requirements. And the ultimate goal of BASO is to decrease emissions, but with the air district standards in place, we could focus a bit more on the building as a whole and preparing our homes for the future. Next slide. And before I get into the new requirements, I do want to talk a little bit about the outreach and engagement that we did, especially to the realtor community. And so this group is likely one of the most challenging stakeholders, since realtor associations will oppose any time to sale policy that's proposed. And so when working with realtors, we found it was much easier working with them one-on-one or at local office meetings rather through the regional association meetings. Because individually, realtors, they're our neighbors, they're fellow community members. They also feel the impacts of climate change, and they understand where we're coming from. And so it was really important for us to find realtor allies in the room to help champion the policy. It was critical when going to council, because then council heard some realtors talk positively about the new requirements and the upcoming changes. And then it also helped that we had a directive from council to create new requirements. And so anytime working with realtors, we could frame those meetings as we have a directive to create requirements. So it's not a if, but when. So work with us to put together the best policy possible. Next slide. Now we'll dive into the new requirements and talk about how they interact with the zero NOx appliance standards. Okay, next slide. So the new requirements for BASO will maintain the current home energy score assessment, which would be completed by the seller. And then a buyer would have 2 years from the date of sale to complete upgrades if compliance hasn't been met prior to that sale. So the seller could complete the upgrades before selling, but in our housing market, most homes sell fast and as is. So the most likely scenario is that a seller would defer upgrades, the upgrade requirements to the buyer. And so allowing the upgrades to be deferred to buyers has several benefits. One, buyers are already budgeting for a big purchase, and the average home price in Berkeley is 1.4 million. So the cost of many of these upgrades are small in comparison. And then also many new homeowners renovate or do upgrades when they purchase a new home. And we want to ensure that those upgrades don't include new gas systems. And also, to determine what upgrades to require, we worked with the technical advisory committee. And given that every building is different, there wasn't a strong consensus on a specific upgrade requirement. Next slide. So then that brings us to a flexible resilience standard. And so with this, homeowners get to choose which upgrades they want to complete. So there's a list of possible upgrade measures. Each measure would have a corresponding credit value based on the emission savings, costs, and other resilience metrics. And buildings need to achieve a minimum number of credits by completing upgrades. And so this was kind of loosely modeled after the work that BayREN County had done on their FlexPath. So by having a list of measures that homeowners can choose from, we can accommodate the range of building conditions and the range of buyers' interests. And it allows owners to prioritize which upgrades to complete in their home first. Next slide. So here's the list of measures and credits. Full compliance is set at 6 credits to align with the measure with the highest emission savings, such as heat pump systems. And owners will need to choose one or more of these measures to achieve 6 credits. And I'll walk through a few kind of example pathways. Next slide. So the simplest way would be to install a heat pump water heater. And with newer 120 volt models, there's less of a need to upgrade a panel or electrical service. Next slide. Another option a homeowner may choose is to complete envelope upgrades. If a homeowner has a leaky home, they'd want to improve for increased comfort and to decrease their heating and cooling costs. They can install attic insulation and wall insulation. They could also upgrade their windows and air seal. Next slide. And other upgrade paths, such as an electrical service panel upgrade or installing a smart panel, can help prepare their homes for electrification. And so with the Air District's appliance standards kicking in soon, we know that some homes aren't ready for heat pump systems just yet and may need to complete electrical upgrades to accommodate the new electric appliances. So while these measures don't reduce emissions, they do help homeowners prepare for the future and ensure a seamless transition to the heat pump when the time comes. Next slide. So this flexible resilience standard has many benefits in addition to helping us achieve our climate action goals to be net zero emissions by 2045. Some upgrades such as insulation or heat pump HVAC systems improve comfort and indoor air quality, and they can also help residents protect residents from extreme heat events and wildfire smoke events. Many upgrades increase safety by eliminating the need for combustive gas in our homes or by replacing knob and tube. And some upgrades, such as installing solar and storage or completing envelope improvements, can also reduce utility bills. Next slide. And then a unique part of our policy is that we're utilizing an escrow deposit. So for this, funds for the upgrades are budgeted and set aside as part of the building sale. So the escrow deposit was set at $5,000 and is split between the buyer and the seller. And a buyer would then have 2 years to complete the upgrades with options for additional extensions. And that full $5,000 deposit is then refunded to the buyer when the property is compliant. If upgrades aren't completed, the deposit is forfeited to the city and would be set aside in a separate fund and used for low-income electrification programs. And so this escrow deposit was already used in Berkeley, and it's also used in several other jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area for private sewer lateral compliance. And so we kind of use an existing process to help kind of cover the cost of the upgrades if they're deferred to the buyer. Next slide. And then another key piece of the policy, and from our initial work with realtors, one of the policy objectives was to allow some sort of early compliance. And so since BASO's goal is to reduce emissions, we included heat pumps as an alternative exemption pathway for buildings. So with this exemption, if a home has at least one heat pump system, the home would not need to complete additional upgrades when the building sells. So this way, if a gas water heater burns out, either before or after the air district appliance standards kick in, there's an incentive for people to install a permitted heat pump system in order to be compliant with BASO for a future sale. And so this way, people can transition to heat pumps well before they intend to sell. And we know that we may need to remove this exemption in the future as more of our homes have heat pumps, but currently only about 5% of buildings, or small residential buildings in Berkeley, have a heat pump system. So there's a lot of opportunities to reduce emissions out there right now. Next slide. So I'll quickly go through kind of how these upgrades work in the home sale process. So if a home has a heat pump system, or if the seller has completed upgrades before the sale, the seller would complete the home energy score assessment. That assessment provides next steps to further electrify the building. The home's listed for sale, and once sold, the property is compliant and no further upgrade is needed. Next slide. And then in the case that a home doesn't have a heat pump, the seller completes that assessment, which verifies the current building systems and conditions and provides a list of upgrade options and recommendations. The home is listed for sale. Funds to cover the upgrades are then set aside during the escrow process and sent to the city as a deposit. After the sale, the buyer then completes upgrades to achieve the minimum number of credits, and they'll utilize those funds that were set aside. Next slide. So when fully implemented, this policy would cover 1 to 4 unit buildings, and it'll be implemented in 2 phases. So the first phase includes 1 to 2 unit buildings, so single family homes and duplexes, and it starts January 1st, in a little over a month. And the second phase expands to 3 to 4 unit buildings in 2028. And so this policy does not include condominiums and ADUs. Next slide. And then for a quick analysis of the impacts of this policy, so in Berkeley, each year we have about 600 single-family home sales and another 100 or so duplexes and 3 to 4 unit buildings. So this is roughly about 2 to 3% of our small residential building stock that is sold each year. And while it's only 2 to 3%, it's small, but it does add up over time. Next slide. And one of the questions we consistently got during outreach was, why do we need to require upgrades at sale when the air district has the zero NOx appliance standards, which will address our existing building emissions? And so for this, these are 2 different, very, very different triggers. We have time of sale versus time of replacement. And so our trigger at time of sale lets us capture properties that might not otherwise touch these systems until they fail. And by leveraging the escrow process, we can structure cost sharing and upgrades in a way that can be less destructive than emergency replacements. And time of sale also gives us a natural opportunity to tackle enabling measures, such as smart panels, 240-volt outlets, pre-wiring, to make future electrification smoother and cheaper. And then on the flip side, time of replacement, the air district rules are a powerful complement. Every gas furnace or water heater replaced after the compliance dates would need to meet zero NOx appliance standards. So this ensures 100% market transformation over time, but it also means that some households will be dealing with these requirements during an appliance failure or emergency replacement. And so we see BASO as laying the groundwork, wiring upgrades, panel efficiency improvements, early heat pump adoption, so homeowners are ready to comply smoothly with the future replacement rules. BASO gets the home ready, and the air district rules ensure that the next appliance replacement is clean. So together, both policies move our homes from electrification readiness to decarbonization. Next slide. And then we're also incorporating a lot of information on the zero NOx appliance rules and the upcoming standards in our outreach material. So each measure, each upgrade measure for BASO has an overview PDF that highlights the installation criteria, the benefits, and additional resources. And so we have a kind of a section that talks about the air district rules because we want homeowners to be aware of the new appliance standards as they're choosing which upgrades to complete. Next slide. So it's kind of the last slide to kind of title up. But we're all starting to feel the real impacts of climate change through frequent storm events and more severe storms. And our homes need to be more resilient to protect us from future climate events. So the new BASO requirements are flexible, and they're as flexible as possible since every home is different and each owner is different. And so we're not requiring homes to be fully electric. However, we want our home to start preparing for future electric appliances. So homes can start transitioning before their gas appliances burn out, so they can help prep, plan, and ensure a smooth and cheaper transition. Next slide. And that's it.